Good morning. Welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. We've been talking about, again, with trust, some of the different planning strategies that can be employed with trust. And I mentioned an example with one of my clients who we, basically were able to take care of his son for him. Well, there's others, I've had over the years, quite a few actually, where one was we set up trust where we had some children were very responsible and maybe one that's not. And on the one that's not, this is where we can set up planning that allows them to be taken care of as well without having to worry, okay, that they're going to get themselves into trouble or they're going to blow through the money. Because what happens, if you think about it realistically, if you got a family, right, you got 3 or 4 children, and those children, they're going to, if one's struggling, okay, and everybody gets the money equally, and the one that's struggling does silly things and blows it, and they go hit up their siblings, right? Well, they're likely to try to help in some way, yes. And so what have we created? We've created potentially some family drama that we don't need there, where proper planning could have, set up a much better situation and protected him. Same thing goes. We never know with marriages today, right? I mean, hopefully there's never a problem, but unfortunately, we know it happens. So if you're leaving money in trust to your children, one of the protections it provides them is that's an asset that can be protected for them. If they did go through a divorce, they may have to divide the other assets, but what you've left them, they get to keep whole for themselves and on to down the bloodline to your grandchildren and so on. So that's another advantage. All right, we've got a caller. Was it Ken?
Hello?
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report.
Thank you. I wanted to ask 2 questions, but they're both limited. One would a bank trust department be a good place to find an executor for your estate, and where would you find a good executor?
Excellent question. I'm going to let Jack jump in with that, and then I'll share some experiences I've had with regard to bank trustees. And the answer is sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bank, it kind of depends. But I'll let Jack talk a little bit about it, and then I'll share some experiences as well.
Yeah, I always try to find somebody, a family friend, who can be that trustee. If not one of the kids, then a family friend, or it doesn't have to be a cousin or an aunt or an uncle. But those people would be good as well. The sort of the last choice would be a trust company or the bank, not because of any reason other than they don't know the people. They're going to be generally more expensive, and they're going to have a very dot the I's, cross the T's only by the letter of the law. They're not really going to know how to read the kid if somebody comes in and makes a request for something. I like it better, and what we can do, we can have the trust department of a trust company or a bank be a co-trustee or a trust protector or a friend of the family. Those are different terminologies to go along with someone who actually knows the family to be the trustee. So the two of them can work together as a team, sort of be a little bit of good cop, bad cop, if you want, and that can provide a method for evaluating what the kids' needs are, if they're legit or not, but also protecting that asset, whatever you've got in that trust for the benefit of that kid, to make it last as long as possible.
This is one of the areas. The trust protector is a great idea with regard to basically helping with the needs of the beneficiaries, but also making sure it's a kind of the human and the machine in a way there, right? Now I've worked with trust departments, and typically on the documents that when we're doing trust and that, my company is listed as the investment advisor on it. So in the examples that I've used, we're there helping whether it's the children, if they're a family member, whoever is going to be trustee, we're helping them. We're explaining what their role is there, what they need to, what the responsibilities that go with that, and how to do it. What's the most cost-efficient way? If we do have need of a corporate trustee, and occasionally that comes in, there's again, finding the right one, because as Jack said, it can be expensive. So we've shopped around, and there are certain, we've worked with a couple of banks in the area, and we've also, they're independent trust companies. One of the advantages that you can have with an independent trust company is that they're not as opposed to potentially with a bank, is they're not going to be managing the assets. They're not going to be, in other words, be handling the investments. So if you have a bank that is both does investing as well as the trust thing, there's a potential there for some maybe conflicts inadvertently set up that, you know, we'd just soon kind of avoid. So if you've got an independent investment advisor, if you've got the trustee that's just doing the admin stuff, that also will keep your costs lower. And then the next piece is that you know, that trust protector is, as Jack said, whether they're working together then with a family member or family friend or something, if that's possible, that's another way to do it. Sometimes if we don't have, as Jack said, as last resort, we lean to the corporate, but again, if it's done correctly, you can do well with that. But finding the right one, and we shop that according to what the needs are, and we also put definition in the trust that says, you know, if there needs to be a change, maybe the person's going to move out of state, or maybe it's going to be more convenient to be someone else. We set forth what the criteria is, and I'm trying to remember. I think it's $250 million in assets or something like that that they have to have. The same thing with on the investment advisory side. There's a certain criteria too to make sure they're large enough and substantial enough that they're going to be able to do that work over time. Does that help? Okay, who do we have? Janet? Good morning, Janet. How are you doing? Welcome to the Retirement Report. Good.
I was asking, what if you had a lifetime right and you deeded it to your daughter or your grandson or what? Do you have to pay inheritance tax or penalties or something like that?
Okay, so to be clear, you have real estate, and you don't necessarily own it. You just have a life estate in it. No,
I own it like a farm.
Right.
And you deed it to your daughter.
I got you.
Keep it in the family, and you just have a lifetime right.
You hold back a lifetime estate on the property, so you get to live there for. Okay, I'll let Jack address that.
It's not inheritance. It's just.
I understand.
Yeah.
Lifetime right.
Okay.
Right. So when you do that, though, you're making a gift to that child. And you've done two things. You've given them the basis that you had when you got the property, which means that if the property ever were sold, there's much higher capital gains. You've also given up control of that property. If you ever needed to lease out part of it or sell a small part of it, you can't do it without her cooperation. So
I don't ever do it anyway.
Right.
Well, we don't always know the future, and that's why I'm a bigger fan of doing it through a trust. That can protect the asset, but also still give you the control that you might need in the future.
There are limited times when a life estate may come into play. One of those being that, for instance, if when you get into Medicaid planning, we may talk about that as if we have time this morning as well, and with regard to probate and all these things together. But when you get into Medicaid planning, sometimes this is it has an offsetting value. The life estate does. It's a way to maybe protect an asset. So if it's a lesser of evils thing when we're comparing, well, we're going to have additional, you know, capital gains tax, but that versus this, you know, potential or maybe even pending long-term care issue and not enough assets and trying to preserve assets. So you get into a whole set of planning there where the life estate could have some value with regard to that kind of thing. It could also, if you get into vacation properties where you're looking to leave something that you want the family to be able to use together, but you retain that life estate and you set up a special type of irrevocable trust to hold it. So there's some specialty times when the life estate may come in, but for the most part, as Jack said, you're actually would be better served by setting up a trust with regard to both making sure that your children get the asset, but they also get it at the most tax advantageous way, and which is, of course, with no tax, ideally, if done correctly. Okay?
Let's see, on my bank statement, you know, the president of the bank told me to put her name on my checking account and savings account.
Right.
Because that way she could get my checking account and savings account on at my desk.
Okay. See, this is again, sure, absolutely. This is joint ownership of bank accounts or investment accounts or anything like this.
Right.
And here again, okay, so let's talk about, this is again that shortcut. Yes, we've accomplished the goal of making it easier for the child to get the asset, but we've also opened up, as Jack said earlier, another can of worms in that we've created some potential liabilities there with regard to that asset.
Yeah, not only that,
We don't ever want this land sold because that it was my father and mother's land.
Sure.
And,
So this is
that's why I was asking that question. And my grandson wants it. And he'll turn 18. What is the legal age for that?
Right. So if you want to keep property, two things that you brought up here. So one of those being if you want to keep property in the family, and the other being that of joint ownership of bank accounts and the like. Bank accounts, again, the problem being, I'll go into more detail about this, if you put that asset in joint ownership with your child and that child gets sued for something, including a divorce case, guess what? That asset's half theirs, and in the eyes of the court, it can get sucked into that, and that money that your money all of a sudden becomes at risk because of putting your child on there as a co on the account. Where again, setting up a trust, you can accomplish the same goals of making sure if something happens to you. In fact, it goes a step further. It doesn't only just take care of when you pass away that it goes to the child, but what if you became incapacitated and you weren't able to take care of your affairs? The trust allows the child to step in and take care of those financial matters, be able to access the money in the bank to pay your bills and take care of your needs all at the same time. All right. Then when it comes to the real estate piece, same kind of thing. If you're leaving it to the potential tax issues, if you want to keep it in the family, and let's say you want to make sure it doesn't get sold, here's where a trust can come in as well. I would not, I got to say, I know there's land trusts and there's different things that you can set up that makes it in perpetuity, basically forever, against selling. I wouldn't quite go that far. I hate cutting off all the options for decades and decades down the road without knowing what situations may arise. So I'd rather set up a trust that gives a little more flexibility on that, but still honors the intent, and you're putting in the trust the language that says this is what you desire and what your goals are.
But say I was talking about my grandson.
I understand.
17.
Yep.
And he'll be 18 in February. What's the
age?
age?
All right, Jack?
Well, he would be old enough to own real estate, but he's also at the most vulnerable time as far as creditors go. And in the judgment of an 18-year-old, I wouldn't necessarily want to trust that with my family farm.
Yeah, right.
Do you have other children as well?
Yeah. No, he doesn't have any. He's still in high school.
No, do you have other children?
Huh?
Do you only have the one daughter?
I only have the one daughter.
Okay.
So one of the things there, this is where setting up a trust again and finding responsible people that can be in charge, but maybe the beneficiary of that is your grandson ultimately, to where it's going to end up with him. But you can put language in there as well that says when, at what age he would be able to be in control of that property. So you could say that, and this goes with other assets too. We could say if there's assets besides the farm that we're leaving, we can say that they can have access to a certain amount of that, say at age either 25 or maybe 30 years old, and then more access at 35 and more access at 40. So we give them the opportunity, one, to maybe get a taste of what it's like to all of a sudden have maybe a little bit of money or have that control, and how responsible they're going to be with it. And then as they have learned their lessons, as that next 5-year period, they're going to do even better and they're going to be more mature. So these are ways too that you can use a trust to help protect the family.
I got another question. I'm sorry to bother you.
Go for it.
I was a postal worker, and daughter is the only beneficiary on my life insurance.
Right.
And it's $48,000. What if something happened to her?
Right.
Before me?
This goes back to the importance of planning, okay? One of the things that comes with the planning piece is that you want to make sure that you've got contingent beneficiaries named on your policies. We've got plans that we've set up with clients where they've literally got 20 different beneficiaries, and we'll have primary beneficiaries, contingent beneficiaries, and we have language. This is one of the good things about a trust as well, that speaks to the fact, well, what happens if this person has died? What happens to their share? Do we want it to go on down the bloodline to their children, or do we want it divided amongst the remaining beneficiaries? These are other questions we ask so that you get to choose and make the right choice for you in terms of how you want that to be done. Again, the importance, though, of doing the planning. All right, we're going to have to take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna delve into this some more and catch your calls as well. So join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.